The Mandarin Oriental's grand ballroom glittered with opulence as I glanced down at my intentionally scuffed shoes. Actually $3,000 custom-made Italian leather deliberately aged to look worn. My father's 60th birthday celebration was in full swing. The elite of corporate America gathered to celebrate Robert Davidson while quietly mocking his struggling youngest daughter. "Look at Emily's shoes," my sister Catherine stage whispered to her husband. "Still wearing the same pair from college. I guess that's what happens when you reject a real career." If they only knew these old shoes had walked through the boardrooms of half the Fortune 500 companies during secret acquisitions. But that was the beauty of being underestimated. People reveal their true nature when they think you're walking in worn leather. "At least try to dress appropriately," my stepmother Margaret hissed as she passed in her Louboutins. "These are important people in business. Important people whose companies Shadow Holdings quietly owned." We'd spent 5 years methodically acquiring controlling stakes in major corporations, though we'd kept our ownership structure deliberately hidden through a maze of shell companies. My phone buzzed silently, a message from my chief operating officer, James Chin. No relation. Wall Street Journal interview confirmed for 9 p.m. Portfolio valuation set at $4.2 billion. All papers ready. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan's skyline sparkled with possibility. Each gleaming tower housed another company under Shadow Holdings' quiet control, though they thought they were independent powers in the corporate world. "Remember when Emily said she was starting her own company?" Catherine laughed to her audience. "Dad offered her a VP position at Davidson Global, and she chose poverty instead." The irony was delicious. Davidson Global actually operated on infrastructure owned by one of Shadow Holdings' subsidiaries. They just didn't realize their reliable business partner was controlled by the daughter they mocked for her shoes. "Ms. Davidson," a voice whispered. Sarah Lynn, my head of strategy disguised as a server. "Goldman's M&A team is asking about the mystery buyer." I nodded slightly, watching another wave of corporate elite enter. Each of them would soon discover that their company's major shareholder had been quietly observing from scuffed shoes, letting them play at power while actually controlling the board. "Still taking the subway?" My brother Michael smirked, adjusting his Rolex. "When you're ready for real work, I might have an entry-level position." The subway was actually a cover. I owned 3 buildings on Park Avenue. While they flaunted their cars and watches, I'd built an empire that made their fortunes look like pocket change. My phone lit up again, this time from our legal team. "Acquisition documents finalized. Ready for 9 p.m. announcement." I shifted in my worn shoes, watching my family bask in their imagined importance. In 2 hours they would learn that while they were busy mocking my footwear, I'd built the most sophisticated corporate empire in history. "Emily," Margaret sighed with theatrical concern, "your father's friends keep asking what you do." "It's embarrassing." "What I do?" I silently controlled major stakes in 50 corporations, owned significant portions of Manhattan real estate, and was about to reveal myself as one of the most powerful forces in business. But they'd learn that soon enough. My phone buzzed again. Bloomberg exclusive ready. Shadow Holdings emerges. The hidden giant of corporate America. Through the ballroom's windows I could see Times Square's massive screens being tested. At exactly 9 p.m., they would display Shadow Holdings' logo and my net worth to the world. The same logo Michael had called amateur when I'd shown him my business plan 5 years ago. "Ms. Davidson," Sarah whispered as she passed with champagne, "the Wall Street Journal reporter is in position. They're asking about Davidson Global's acquisition." The acquisition they didn't know was coming, not realizing their entire company was about to be owned by the daughter they thought couldn't afford new shoes. The beauty of true power is letting others think they're in control while quietly owning everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael's voice boomed through the sound system. "In 1 hour, Davidson Global will announce the largest acquisition in our company's history." I continued standing quietly in my scuffed shoes, suppressing a smile. In exactly 60 minutes, a very different kind of announcement would shatter their celebration. Around me, corporate titans gathered in anticipation, none of them realizing that the most powerful person in the room was the woman they thought couldn't afford new footwear. "Those shoes are actually painful to look at," Catherine smirked, showing off her new Jimmy Choos. "I suppose this is what happens when you waste time on entrepreneurship." If she only knew these shoes had walked through the signing of deals worth billions. But that was part of the carefully crafted deception. While they focused on appearances, I'd been quietly revolutionizing corporate America. "Emily," Margaret called out sharply, "move away from the VIP table. We can't have you embarrassing us in front of the Goldmans." The Goldmans, whose investment bank had unknowingly facilitated half of Shadow Holdings' acquisitions. I'd orchestrated their largest deals, approved their strategies, and controlled their futures, all while they thought they were independent powers in finance. "Ms. Davidson," Sarah whispered as she passed, "CNBC is asking about the mysterious buyer of Midwest Industries." I nodded slightly, shifting my weight between my deliberately worn shoes. The mysterious buyer was another Shadow Holdings subsidiary, part of our carefully orchestrated plan to consolidate power while maintaining anonymity. Until revelation. Through the windows I could see news vans gathering outside the Mandarin Oriental. They thought they were here for Davidson Global's announcement. Instead, they'd witnessed the emergence of corporate America's most powerful hidden force. "Remember when Emily tried to pitch her business plan?" Michael laughed to a group of executives. "Dad said it looked like a high school project." A high school project that had revolutionized corporate acquisitions and quietly gained control of companies worth billions. While they mocked my supposed poverty, I'd been orchestrating some of the largest takeovers in business history. Sarah murmured as she collected empty glasses. Wall Street Journal reporter in position. I continued standing quietly, watching my father hold court near the main table. Robert Davidson, corporate titan, celebrating his 60th birthday while his youngest daughter stood in scuffed shoes. If he'd bothered to check the ownership structure of his recent acquisitions, he might have noticed they all led back to Shadow Holdings. "Emily," Catherine sighed with fake sympathy, "you could at least try to network. These people run the business world. People whose companies I owned, whose strategies I controlled, whose futures would be shaped by what I was about to reveal." The waiters began serving the main course, carefully following Margaret's instructions to serve my corner last. The $600 per plate dinner would be cold by the time it reached me, but that was part of the performance. Davidson Global is about to become the most powerful corporation in America, Michael declared, champagne sloshing. Dad's announcement will reshape industries. My phone lit up with another message, this time from our PR team. All major networks aligned. Times Square billboards tested and ready. "Emily," my father finally addressed me directly, "at least try to look successful. You're embarrassing enough as it is." I met his gaze calmly. "Oh, I'm very interested in success, Dad. In fact, I wouldn't miss tonight's revelations for anything." Catherine sauntered over, designer heels clicking. "Still working on that mysterious company? The one Dad's board said would never succeed." "Something like that," I smiled, thinking about the complex network of corporations that made Shadow Holdings the hidden force behind American business. The room was buzzing with anticipation. Business reporters checked their cameras, executives huddled in groups, and my family basked in their moment of perceived triumph. "Poor Emily," Margaret murmured to her social circle. "She could have had everything at Davidson Global. Now she can't even afford proper shoes." My phone buzzed again, a message from our acquisition team. "Final paperwork complete. Davidson Global takeover ready for announcement." Sarah appeared beside me. "Ma'am, Wall Street Journal reporter approaching." Through the ballroom's windows we could see Times Square preparing to switch. They thought they were here for a merger announcement. They had no idea they were about to witness the emergence of corporate America's true power. "Everyone gather round." Michael called out. "Dad's announcement will change business history." My father stood at the microphone, confidence radiating. "Friends, family, distinguished colleagues." The Wall Street Journal reporter's voice cut through the room. "Ms. Davidson? Confirming your acquisition of Davidson Global for $4.2 billion. The silence was absolute. The silence shattered as every phone in the room began buzzing simultaneously. I remained standing calmly in my scuffed shoes as chaos erupted around me. The Wall Street Journal headline flashed across every screen. Shadow Holdings revealed. America's hidden empire. Emily Davidson acquires family company for $4.2 billion. Corporate America's most mysterious power player unmasked. That's impossible," Michael stammered, his champagne glass slipping from his hand. "Emily can't even afford new shoes." "Can't afford them?" I finally moved from my spot, each step of my worn shoes now echoing in the stunned silence. Or chose not to flaunt wealth while building something extraordinary? The ballroom screens switched to live feeds. Shadow Holdings' true portfolio, our global reach, and the extensive list of corporations we quietly controlled. Each revelation caused another wave of gasps through the crowd. But we investigated every major player. Catherine's voice cracked. Your company wasn't even registered. Because I designed it not to be, I replied, finally showing them my shoe's true pedigree. Shadow Holdings operates through over 300 entities, including, I might add, the companies that supply Davidson Global's core infrastructure. My father stumbled forward, his usual confidence evaporating. The merger we're announcing won't be happening, I confirmed. Shadow Holdings now owns Davidson Global. In fact, we control the majority of corporations represented in this room. The Wall Street Journal article continued scrolling. Shadow Holdings' portfolio includes controlling stakes in 50 major corporations, making Emily Davidson one of the most influential hidden forces in global business. Margaret clutched her Chanel purse like a shield. 4.2 billion. But that would make you the most powerful private investor in corporate America, James said, emerging from the crowd in an impeccable suit. And that's before announcing our other acquisitions. The business reporters in the room had recovered from their shock and were broadcasting live. In an unprecedented revelation, Shadow Holdings has emerged as the controlling force behind America's largest corporations. Its founder, Emily Davidson, who her family mocked for wearing worn shoes. Ma'am, Sarah approached, now in executive attire. The SEC chairman is requesting an emergency meeting. They're concerned about market implications. Through the windows, Times Square blazed with Shadow Holdings' logo. The same logo Michael had mocked as something from a community college project when I'd first shown it to him. All this time, Catherine whispered, staring at my shoes, while we were making jokes about your appearance. I was building an empire, I said quietly. Every major corporate acquisition in the past 3 years? Orchestrated by Shadow Holdings. Those mysterious buyers Davidson Global couldn't identify? All us. Michael made one last desperate attempt. The board won't accept this. They trust Davidson Global. Do they? I raised an eyebrow, projecting another set of data. Check your client list against Shadow Holdings subsidiaries. You've actually been working for me for years. You just didn't know it. James approached with a tablet. The SEC filing is live. Davidson Global's stock will be suspended at market open, pending integration into Shadow Holdings. And speaking of integration, I continued, every Davidson Global employee will receive 2 options tomorrow. Join Shadow Holdings with tripled compensation packages, or accept a generous severance. Unlike some people, I believe in rewarding talent regardless of their shoes. Margaret's social climbing instincts kicked in. Emily, darling, surely we can discuss this as family. Family. I turned to her. Like when you mocked my shoes. Or when you made me eat cold food at my own father's birthday. The screens showed Shadow Holdings' true scope. Business strategies that had revolutionized industries, acquisitions that had transformed markets, and a corporate structure that prioritized innovation over appearances. Tomorrow morning, I addressed the stunned room, Shadow Holdings begins its public phase. Davidson Global will become a subsidiary, its operations modernized, its culture completely rebuilt. My father found his voice again. You'll destroy everything I built. No, Dad. I'll improve everything you couldn't imagine. While you were teaching Michael how to network, I was building the future of business. While you were mocking my shoes, I was revolutionizing corporate America. The daughter you thought couldn't afford new footwear? She now owns your entire empire. Sarah appeared again. Ma'am, international markets are reacting. They're requesting guidance on the transition. I glanced down at my worn shoes, now recognized as a deliberate choice rather than a necessity. Tell them Shadow Holdings protocols are now in effect. And prepare the boardroom for tomorrow's global staff announcement. The ballroom had become a media circus, with cameras broadcasting the transformation live across America. Through the windows, the Shadow Holdings logo glowed bright against the night sky, its power now unveiled for all to see. Ms. Davidson, a final reporter called out, one last question. Why maintain the appearance of poverty for so long? I looked down at my shoes, thinking about the years of careful planning, the quiet acquisitions, the patient wait for this perfect moment. Because true power doesn't need to show off, I replied. Sometimes the best way to build something extraordinary is to let others underestimate you. While they were judging my shoes, I was quietly becoming their owner. As my helicopter lifted off from the building's helipad, I looked down at the transformed skyline. Sometimes the person they mock for being poor becomes the one who owns the building. Sometimes the greatest victory comes from letting them think you're struggling while you're actually conquering. And as for these shoes, I think I'll keep them. After all, some of the best deals in history were made by someone everyone underestimated, quietly building an empire while they weren't looking. The shadows continued to spread across Manhattan, each glowing sign now a reminder that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one they thought couldn't afford to be there. As the news continued to break across global markets, the headlines told the story that would reshape corporate history. The Shadow Rises: How a Poor Daughter Built a $4.2 billion Empire. America's New Queen, Emily Davidson's Path from Scuffed Shoes to Corporate Dominance. From Mockery to Mastery, the hidden force behind corporate America. Davidson Global's offices were buzzing with activity as employees discovered their new reality. The tripled salaries and enhanced benefits sparked celebration among the staff, while the executive floor remained eerily quiet. Michael's corner office, the one he'd bragged about for years, was being transformed into Shadow Holdings' strategic command center. Catherine's precious executive lounge would become an innovation hub. And my father's elaborate suite? The new employee development facility. Ma'am, James reported, 99% of staff have accepted Shadow Holdings offers. The remaining 1% are exclusively from the old executive team. I smiled, thinking about the lessons in humility that would follow. Sometimes the best view of success isn't from the shiniest shoes. It's from worn ones, watching, waiting, and building something revolutionary while others are busy showing off their expensive footwear. The shadow had revealed itself, and its power would forever change the landscape of American business.